your feet are your connection to the ground. Currently I'm wearing shoes, something I don't do a lot of. But we live in a concrete jungle, and shoes actually to some degree play a role, right? If you can get out of your shoes for some time, and this may be gross to some people, but the fact is your feet are actually pretty important. One of the most fundamental things you can do is to try and get those toes separated, all right? And to do that, I can run my fingers through my toes, and it may not feel too good, right? And when I get good at this, I can actually get both hands, but if I sit here and allow my fingers to keep my toes separated for some time, my anatomy starts to adjust to this, right? So this is one of the things, if I'm just sitting around at my desk at home in front of the TV, that I can do, right? And the other big part of this is that you want to spend 3 to 5 minutes just sitting here so that we can get some sort of adjustment. And you will see an adjustment easily within the first week, okay? That said, from here, what I would want to do is, and let's just say I use both feet, is go for a walk. So if I actually went and walked barefoot for 5 or 10 minutes a day, you start to make these changes, okay? The other part to this whole thing is you've got these big toes right here. And we've seen some big problems with people who don't keep the big toe connected to the ground. And here's how that works. My hip has a relationship with this toe. If I'm generating force or I'm trying to create stability through my hip and I keep that toe on the ground, you will see an arch kick up. And this is one of the fundamental things we see people, or even people who've been told they were born flat-footed. We all were born flat-footed. It was those of us who made the connection to the ground and weren't putting shoes too early that actually developed the archway, because the foot became strong and it built up, right? And there's a lot of minutia in here, but the fact is if I get stable through that hip and I keep my big toe connected, I create an arch here, which allows me to stay stable. And so if I'm walking, I don't necessarily grab the ground, but my toes can touch the ground. But if I have connection to that ground, I keep an arch in my foot. If I don't have an arch, and I lose that arch. So this is where I become, and this is where we talk about that valgus knee, or I'm not using my hips, or I'm looking for stability in other places medially instead of laterally or externally rotated versus internally rotated. And that big toe plays that role of that archway. And my butt is actually starting to cramp right now because I'm continuing to do this. But I've done a pretty decent job at keeping that arch my entire life, probably because I talk about this stuff ad nauseum. But even sitting, I try and keep that big toe connected to the ground so that I'm never losing that. So for those of us that actually exercise too, whether we're deadlifting, squatting, whatever, when the foot's connected to the ground, that big toe, keep it connected so that when we got that hip on, we're creating that arch. And we're not doing anything that's going to structurally create any problems here. We're actually getting into a stable position, which allows us to stay properly stable, right? So just keep these things in mind, is to get those toes as wide as you can and work to get all the way up into those fingers and open that up. And then go for a walk after you've done that. And then make sure you've got that connection to the ground with the feet. This is easy stuff that can be integrated every single day for 5 or 10 minutes, or when you're unwinding at home, and can change your life because of your connection to the ground. You've got 100 to 200,000 specialized nerves in the bottom of that, regardless if you're wearing Vans on a 0 differential or not. This little platform right here buffers off that feedback loop to your brain. And if you buffer off that feedback loop to your brain, you're making poor decisions when you're on the ground. So, get those connections back.